We're on Daf Ayin Hey, 5 lines down from the top of the page. And the Gemara is now bringing a pasuk, once again, a machlokas between Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi. V'nachash afar lachmo. This is a pasuk in Yeshayahu, Perek Samach Hey. And the bread of the serpent is afar, is the dust. What does this mean? And we know that a nachash, a serpent, will eat other things. I don't know, bugs and frogs, I don't know what. And it's not limited to afar. Rabbi Ami Rav Asi Chad Omar, according to one interpretation, afilu ochel kol madani olam, you can feed a nachash any food that would be a delicacy in the world, anything. Toim b'em tam afar, it'll always taste this taste of afar. Chad Omar, another interpretation is the nachash is afilu ochel kol madani olam ain't daitum yusheves olvat sheyochal ofar. He doesn't enjoy, he doesn't get satiated by anything, even the most beautiful, wonderful delicacies that you feed him, except for ofar. And the Ein Yaakov writes this is midah keneged midah, because as a result of the nachash, the curse of Adam Arishon was ki afar atav el afar tashu. Tanya, we learned in the Brayso Omer Rabbi Yossi. Bo re'ei shelo kamidas HaKadosh Baruch Hu midas basav v'dam. When man is upset with someone else, his behavior towards that other person is a lot different than when God is upset, because maknit basav v'dam, midas basav v'dam, maknit es chaver v'yored imo l'chaya. If a person has it in against someone else, and he really wants to cause him anguish, then there's no end of how far he would go to cause that person, his adversary, a loss, even if it means cutting into his business, creating a competition, he'll do it. Obviously, the nachash, because of his sin, deserved a klola, and he would only eat afar, but nevertheless, this was not a total klola. Why? Because ola legag mizonosav imo yored lamata mizonosav imo. He will always have what we call mizonosav mitsuyim lo tamid. He finds his sustenance is always accessible, because wherever he goes, he'll find offer. Whether it's offer on the roof, offer on the floor, on the ground, wherever he goes, he's got an ample supply of offer. So the divine curse always has an element of good in it. It's limited. Whereas when man is mocked at his chaver, he goes to all ends, unlimited. Kilas Knan. HaKadosh Baruch Hu cursed Knan that he will be an Eved li'achiv. Arur Knan, Eved avodim yeliechav. And yet, there's a good part to this curse. The flip side, so to speak, is that he's an Eved who eats his Rebbe's food. His master has to supply him with sustenance. Ochel masharabo, ochel v'shoseh masharabo shoseh. A master is obligated in the parnasa to support and give mizonos to his Eved. So it's not totally a total curse to be an Eved. Kilel esa isha. Again, we're going to see that within the klala, there still is a limitation to the klala. God doesn't go all the way. He curses isha, harba arba etzvonech ve'eronech, which includes what we call dam nida and tumas leda. This is all what we call zivas dam. So from her privates, she has dam coming out, and you would think, this is so repulsive. Man would find a woman repulsive. I mean, that's where all this terrible dam comes from. But yet, hakol rotzim achreo. The klola has its breaks, its limitations. Everyone is running after her. And the Maharsha writes, afal pisha pia shel isha pia shel mata is moli dam hakol rotzim achreo. Kilel es hadoma. Right, the Torah says, "Arura adama bavurecha kots v'darda tatzmiach loch," and yet hakol nizonim imen. Everyone depends upon the adama. Now, earlier on Daf Ayin Dailed Amid Beis, the Gemara was analyzing the parsha of Man, which opens with the words Laman Anosecha. And the Gemara now continues to darshan other psukim with regard to Achilas Man. Now, the time when the Klal Yisrael in the Midbar started crying about the Man, and they said, they declared, Zachanus Adaga Sharnochal b'Mitzrayim Chinam. What does that mean? Nechleku, we have Machlokas, Rav, and Shmuel. What is this Daga? Chad Amar Dagim. We remind ourselves of the fish that we ate in Mitzrayim. And Chad Amar Arayos. That the word Dag or Daga in this context is a secret password for arayos, for sexual relations. And there were certain arayos that they were allowed to engage in Mitzrayim that had the status of Bnei Noach, but it became those very same arayos, those very same close relatives became asuros lahem b'midbar. And the word daga here means lashon tashmish. And daga, according to this particular interpretation, is a secret password for tashmish, for sexual relations. Kimo vayidgu l'rov b'kerfa oretz, or as the Marsha would have it, bisman shahayu mutarim linase gam l'krovoseim hayu parim v'rabim b'yosef. That a dag is representative of parim v'dagim, parim v'ravim. Right, you go to an aquarium and you'll see millions of fish. You go down, to see the Red Sea, you'll see millions of fish. That's Piri V'Rivya on the most expanded level of the fish. Mandi Omer Dogim Dichsiv Nochal. The pasuk says Zachanos Adogat Shar Nochal b'Mitzrayim. We ate in Mitzrayim. Clearly, an indication that we're talking about fish. But Mandi Omer Rayos Dichsiv Chinam. Is it possible that they got fish for free? I mean, the Mitzrayim were enslaving them, and then they're going to give them free fish? Impossible. But the word chinam, rather, is that when they could marry their close relatives, they worked out the finances in such a way between the families that they wouldn't have to spend so much money with an expensive dowry to marry, their own relatives. So if the word daga is an allusion to intimacy, then it's bechina. They really could get away before the Torah prohibited and enjoined them from having these relations with their close relatives. They could get away with murder. They didn't have to spend so much money on a wedding. How do you support the words Zachanos Adaga Asher Nochal b'Mitzrayim? Lishna ma'al Yanok. This is what we call Lashon Nakiya. He doesn't want to use the word for the relationship, so he uses a Lashon Nakiya. What's a Lashon Nakiya? The Siv, and this is a pasuk in Mishlei, Achla u'machas apia bi'amar lo pa'alti oven. We're talking about a woman who has an illicit, immoral relationship, and after she has this relationship, she wipes herself on the bottom there in her privates, and she denies that she ever did it. And the pasuk uses the word achla as a metaphor for a sexual relationship. Now, Jerry, you came a little bit later, so I just want to show you where we're up to on Daf Ayin Hey Amid Aleph. Ulamandi Omar Dogim. Okay, let's see if we can find the place. Ulamandi Omar Dogim. You see, the lines get wider, and if you count down to the wide lines, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say 3 lines. Lamandi Omar, my Dogim, my Chinam. If Dogim means literally fish, why would the Mitzvim give free fish?
I have it. Thank you very much.
To Bnei Yisrael, right? That doesn't make much sense. So the answer is, they they got fish that didn't belong to the Mitzvah. How? The Omar Mar, this is a statement in the Gemara in Sota Yud Aleph in the name of Rabbi Avira, Kishahayu Yisrael Shavim Mayim. One of the great miracles that took place in Mitzrayim was that when the Jews drew the water from the Nile, HaKadosh Baruch Hu mazmin lahem litoch hamayim dogim ktanim b'chadeim. So when they pulled up the water, they found fish, small fish in the water, and the Mitzrayim didn't know about this. This was a great miracle, and they ate the fish. I understand that if this parasha is talking about fish, aval arayis lo pritzi bahu. But according to this Mandi Omer, we don't want to assume that the Jewish people were prutzim barayos, that now they should complain about arayos. They never had these relationships with incestual relationships. And Hainu Dechsiv, and that's why Shlomo Melech in Shir Hashir praises the Jewish people, the Jewish girls in Mitzrayim, and describes them as Gad Na'ul Achosi Kala, Gad Na'ul Mayan Chasum. It's a reference to the tznius of Bnos Yisrael b'Mitzrayim. They weren't prutzos barayos. Gad Na'ul means their privates were closed, were locked. They didn't have any hefkeris, to have prutzos with the men of Mitzrayim. But Elamanti Omar arayos. But if you're telling me that they were complaining about the fact that now they could no longer have relations with their arayos, those incestual relationships, then Mayan Chosim, what was the praise of Shlomo Melech when he said that it's a Mayan Chosim, that they protect themselves? The Gemara answers, Mehanach Sirin lo pritzi bahu. With regard to those arayos that were prohibited for them in Mitzrayim because they had the status of Bnei Noach, and Ben Noach is also amongst his 7 mitzvahs. One of them is Gili Arayos. And the Gemara in Sanhedrin in Zion goes through a list of which Arayos are prohibited to a Ben Noach and which additional Arayos are on the no-go list for a member of Klal Yisrael. So now we understand that the Jewish people are still being praised by Shlomo Mayim Chosim because those Arayos that were prohibited as Bnei Noach, they were very careful about those arayos. But the only thing is, there were other arayos that would be added to them, but above and beyond Bnei Noach, as Bnei Yisrael. And they were complaining about that because, as we said before, it was a very easy business, to get married with one of your relatives. And that's what they were complaining about. So in the 11th chapter of Bamidbar, Moshe hears the people that are crying about the mishpachos. And what does that mean? Al iske mishpachos shenesam lishkav etzlam. On the fact that now in the Midbar they were enjoined from having these close relationships and marrying their close relatives. If we're interpreting the word daga as dagim, my bochel mishpachosav. After all, they weren't crying about the mishpachos; they were crying about the dagim. So the Gemara answers, even according to Mandi Omer, that they were complaining about dagim, that they no longer got free fish. He admits that they were also crying about arayot shenesru lahem. Now we go on in the pasuk. Zachanu es hadoga sher nochal b'Mitzrayim chinam, and then in pasuk it says Zachanu es hakishu im v'esavatichim v'esachatzir v'esabtzalim v'esashumin. Is Rav Ami v'Rav Asi again a machlok between Rav Ami and Rav Asi? Chadom, according to one opinion, tam kol minim tamu b'man, but tam chameshes milim alo lo tamu bo. That although when they ate the man, they could taste any taste, but the exception of 5 tastes of 5 different vegetables. And we're going to soon see why God did not want them to eat those vegetables. Is then I understand that since during the period of Midbar, 40 years, when they ate the man, they could not taste none of these five, Kishum, Avtichim, Chatzir, B'tzolim, and Shumin, and now we're complaining. We missed the good old days in Mitzrayim when we ate these vegetables. So the Gemara now says, the Chadamar, according to another opinion, Tam kol minim tamu tamon umamoshan v'alolu tamon v'lo mamoshan. Then it's true that they could taste even these five minim, kishuim and the like, when they ate man, but they only tasted the abstract tam, but not the mamoshas. Now, why is that important? Because, as the Mefarshim explained, these five vegetables are not healthy, neither for pregnant women nor for nursing women. But this man, the Omer, says that, you know what? Even if in the man they tasted these five minim, it would not in any way damage the Vlad, the fetus, who has to either be born or has to nurse from his mother, because they only tasted the tam and not the mamish. The Mashal writes, Amam below mamoshim eno kasha lemubaros ulemenikos. If it's only the tam, then that's not detrimental in the cases of ubros, pregnant women, umenikos, nursing. Now the pasuk says, with regard to man, we're talking about the shvach of the man. Vayikru b'nei Yisrael shmo man v'hu kizera gad lovon. Omer Rav Asi ogol ki gida, which means that it was a zera gad, like the gida. Gida, Rashi identifies as coriander, or in Hebrew kuzbara, and it's round, or at least it's flat and round. And the man is being compared to this seed, which is called kuzbara. It's a round seed. Now, what was the color of man? It was lavan. Lavan kimagolis. It was shiny white like a pearl. You know, I was wondering if the man was shaped like a pearl, so why did the Torah have to bother saying God? I mean, just tell me, it's Ogul. No, he's saying Lavan Kimargolia. So it was white like a pearl. If it was white like a pearl, then probably it was round like a pearl. In any event, I'm not sure why the Torah has to tell me, why is it so important that I know that the man was round in shape and it was white in color? Is something round more beautiful than something flat or square or rectangular? I don't know. Maybe if it's round, it's easier to collect it. I don't know. I'm not sure why there's any great significance to the roundness. Lavan, okay, that's the beauty of a precious stone in case of pearl. Tanya Nami Hachi or Tanrabana, according to one girsa, God Shedome Lizera Pishtan be Oda give Olam. He's no longer comparing it to coriander, but rather to flax. And flax, when it's covered by its husk, in its natural state, it's round. Acherim Omer, others say, God, this is unbelievable. Shedome La Goda, that the word God is like what we call agadata, which is what we're learning today. Agadata. Shemosheches libo shalodom kemayin. You know, just like a person has a thirst for water, so too he has a thirst for Torah. But which part of the Torah does he love? He loves the agadata. And the man also is Mosheches lev ha'adam lachila. It had the time of all the time. Tanya, Edach, we learned in another brisa. God shemagid lahem liYisrael. That the word God is an allusion to the fact that the man could reveal secrets. And now we're going to have a whole sugi about what secrets are revealed by the man. And in order to appreciate this, we have to introduce the fact that every man that was collected for each individual was maximum omer. So that, for example, if there were 5 members of the household, then you collected 5 omrim, 1 omer per person per head of man. And the amount of man that would fall for each group, for each family group, each unit, each OL, was a divine revelation of how many people were shaykh to that family unit. And therefore, ben tisha l'rishon, ben tisha l'rishon, ben tisha ben shiva li'achron, a woman was married, and now she gets married again. Either her first marriage ended in divorce, or maybe her first husband died. Now she marries just 2 months later, after the death or the gerushin from her first husband, she marries a second husband. And she becomes pregnant and she gives birth. Who is the father of that child? Is the child a 9-month-old baby to her previous husband, or a 7-month preemie to her current husband? And maybe today we would just test the, do chromosome, what's it called? Gene testing or so. No, what's it called?
DNA.
DNA. Okay, DNA. Thank you. And now we know who is the father of this child. Why? Because there would be an extra omer of man that fell on the house to which this baby belonged. If he belonged to the first husband, there'd be an extra omer for him. If he belongs to the second, Lavan. Okay, so you told me what the word God means. Magid, it reveals secrets. Well, what's Lavan? Shemal ben avodoseim shel Yisrael. Now, we never heard that man was a mechaper, like a carbon. Why is it mechaper malbin? It turns white, that which is red, the avonos of Yisrael. And Rashi and many others explain that the man fell on a daily basis. From one day to the next, you never knew. Your closets were empty. You had no source of sustenance other than the man. How did you know that tomorrow there'd be man? You weren't allowed to take for tomorrow. And if you did, it became spoiled. It must have been a matter of bitachon that you relied upon on Hashem, and you did tshuva to make sure that you were worthy of this great miracle of man. And this is the legacy of man, that we are now a people that have bitachon, we have faith in God, and everything that happens, somehow it's part of his divine plan for the good of man. And therefore, when we do tshuva, so that from one day to the next, God will have compassion and bring us the man, because today's man is gone tomorrow. We need a new supply of man, is Malbin Avonoseim Shel Yisrael. Tanya Rabbi Yossi Yomi Kishem Shad Novi Hoya Magid Lehem Yisrael. Masha Bechorin Umasha Bestokim. A prophet could reveal things that are hidden, and those that are issues that are concealed. Kachaman Magid Lehem Yisrael Masha Bechorin Umasha Bestokim. So too man will reveal that which is concealed. Ketzan. Now again, we had one example from the baby. We don't know if he was 7 or 9, etc. But here's another example. Shnayim bo lifnei Moshe l'din ze omer avdi ganavta. V'ze omer ato macharta li. Amalem Moshe said, and this is a pasuk in Yirmiyah Perek Chaf Aleph, Dino leboker mishpat. Tomorrow with daybreak, we'll know the answer. Who is the rightful owner of this Eved? What's going to happen in the morning? The pasuk says that when the man fell, vayiklutu otso baboker baboker. Now we're going to know who stole the Eved, or if anybody stole the Eved. Why? Lemachar, they looked and to see where the man would fall, and there had to be an extra portion of man for the Eved. Im nimtza omro b'beis rabo rishon bi'adua shezeh gnava. V'im nimtza omro bebeis rabo sheni biyodua shezeh mecharolo. So it depends where you find the extra omer. If you find it in the possession of the first, then we know that the Evid was stolen by the second guy, but the rightful owner is the first. If we found an extra omer in the second, it means he bought it kedasu kedin, and the second guy did not steal it. I believe that this Gemara is based on a principle called umdana de muchsa, or I should say umdana de muchach. I meant to say. I mean, you don't have two witnesses to testify that he stole it, but we have circumstantial evidence. Nimta omro bebeis rabo sheni. Yeah, fine. Here's another case. Ish ve'isha shebo lifnei Moshe l'din. And apparently they're separated one from the other, and each one is hurling accusations at the other one. She's blaming him that he mistreated her, and he's saying, no, I treated her perfectly. She just upped and left me. Ze omer hisar chalai. She left the house on her own. That was her decision. She went to live with her father. There was no justification. I didn't in any way cause her pain. And I don't want to pay the ksuba. If she walks out of this marriage, I don't want to pay the ksuba. She, on the other hand, claims that he was mistreating her, and she had no choice but to pack her bags and go to her father's house. And he asked to divorce me and give me a ksuba. Mishpa will find out in the morning. If we'll find omra bebeis baila, if we'll find an extra omer in the house of the husband, that she really belongs at home, and she had no right and justification of leaving the house. But nimto omra bebeis avia, if her father gets an extra portion outside of his oil, then biadua shehu sarach, he wronged her, and therefore she had every right to pack her bags. And even though he didn't divorce her, she couldn't tolerate the wrong and the insults from this man. She went to live in her father's house, and that's where she belongs. And he has to give her a divorce and pay the ksuba. Ksiv, furthermore, it says, Uberedes hatal al hamachne loyla yerid aman olav. So it seems that the man would fall in the machne, because it says al hamachne, in the camp, which presumably means that every person just opened up his door, his oil in the morning, and there he saw the man. But Ksiv, in another pasuk, in Shmos Tezayin, it says, Hineni mamti lachev lechem in hashamayim v'yotzav ha'am v'loktu tvayom b'yoma. Now, v'yotzav means that they went outside of the machna. So what is it? Is it ala machna, or is it shatur? Not only that, I'm sorry, or is it yatzam v'loktu? Now we have a third pasuk. Uksiv shatu on v'loktu. Shatu means they went to a very far place in order to retrieve the man. Okay, so how do we reconcile these three psukim? Tzadikim yorad lehem al pesach b'teim. Beinanim yatsu chutz l'machne v'loktu. Rishayim shatu l'makom rachok v'loktu es haman. That's self-explanatory. Now the pasuk says lechem min hashamayim. It sounds like that the bread fell down. They didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to bake it. It was already pre-prepared. Uksiv, but later it says v'yaso so ugos, and v'yaso means they had to bake, and it's only cookies. It's not bread. Uksiv, a third pasuk says v'tachanu b'reichayim, which means that they took the man and they had to grind it. I mean, that's very early in the process of preparing bread. Ketzad, how do we reconcile these psukim? Tzadikim lechem. They just went, opened their tent and they had fresh bread. Not only that, the bread was already baked. Beinanim ugos, which means they would have to bake the ugos. It was only a pre-prepared flour and water, etc., batter. Rishoim tochanu v'rechaim. Rishoim had to start mamish from scratch with malach of tchina, of grinding, and that's what we have for the Rishonim. I was always wondering about this Gemara. It says that the Beinanim had to make another effort. They had to bake the ugos, or in the previous Gemara, we said that the Beinanim had to go chutz lamachne. You know what? Let's not be lazy about it. Like I say, sometimes I have to go to the local makolet, which is a couple of blocks from here. Baruch Hashem, if I didn't go to the local makolet, I would get no exercise at all. I have a suspicion that this Gemara might be taken a little bit more symbolically, that the man was meant to either give a person a pat on the back and recognize his achievements in Avodas Hashem, or give him a little push, or maybe give him a shtach. Now the pasuk says the following: Ubishlu ba parur. Parur is a kedera pot, and they had to cook the man in a pot. Omer of Chama, Malamid sheyared lem liyisrael imaman tzike kedera. Don't misunderstand that the man did not necessarily have to be cooked. Certainly not for the tzaddikim, because we said for the tzaddikim, it was lechem. It was fully baked bread. But the answer is that tzike kedera. Tzike kedera is another word for spices, tavlinin, that are put into a tavshil so that it'd be more tasty. So imagine you go to the store and you buy a pizza, and then you open up the pizza and you find that they added all sorts of little spices for those who want to add harif and so forth. Here also, the man fell down, and together with the man, there were spices that came in little packets. I'm just kidding. And it was an option if you wanted to add, these spices to your portion of man. Now, of course, you could always ask, why was this necessary? I mean, if they wanted to taste the taste of tavlin, they could have thought about tavlin. Then the pasuk says, "Veheme viu elov od nidava baboker baboker." This pasuk is in the context of what's called Meleches HaMishkan in Shmos Lamed Vav, and these were the contributions that were brought by the rank and file citizen of Israel on a daily basis every morning. So the Gemara wants to know, what does it mean, baboker, baboker? Why do you have to repeat the word twice? Couldn't I have understood that if it would have said just boker once, I would understand that they came forward on the morn with their contributions? On Rabbi Shmuel, Bar Nachman Omar, Rabbi Yonasan, midavar sheyared lahem baboker baboker. That this phrase baboker baboker is reminiscent and should be associated with the man. It says vayilkitu oso baboker baboker. And what did they find when they went out to collect the man? Something else came down for Shemaim, not just man, but avonim tovos margolios, expensive jewels came down together with the man. And what did the Jewish people do with these expensive jewels, these avonim tovos margolios, that came down from heavens with man? Did they pocket it? Did they sell it and buy stocks or a retirement plan? Well, what did they do with this? And the Torah tells us they gave it as an idava for the building of the Beis Hamikdash. The pasuk says with regard to the building of the Mishkan, "V'hanesiim heviu es avnei hashoah." Now, if we translate this pasuk literally, it sounds like the princes of Israel brought as a contribution these beautiful stones, precious stones called shoam stones. But we're going to now quote a brisa that the word Nesiim does not mean what you think it means. It's not a prince, but rather Tana. We learned in a brisa that Nesiim are anonim, are clouds. Mamish, real clouds. V'keinu omer, like we see in a pasuk in Mishlei Chafei, Nesiim v'ruach v'geshem ayin. The Nesiim, which are the clouds, they brought the Avnei Shoam. It was an amazing miracle that the clouds brought Avonim Yikaros, very special and expensive stones. Now, the pasuk describes man in the following way: "Vayatamo kitam l'shad hashamen." Rabbi Avo shad zeh. So he's interpreting the word shad as a woman's nipple when she nurses a baby, and the tinok toim ba kamatamim. In other words, depending upon what the mother ate, the milk would have different tastes. Afaman. So too in this analogy, the man calls man Yisrael ochlim oso motzim bo kama ta'amim. They would find different tastes, like the baby who suckles his mother. Ika diami, another interpretation of l'shade, is l'shade mamish. It's a demon. And what's the equation between man and a demon? Ma shade zemis hapech lekama gvonim. It changes all the time. It's like a chameleon. Afhaman mishapech lekama ta'amim. I have a note here. He says that on the pasuk in Breshis Gimel, it says, "Vayishkon mikedem legan eden es akruvim es lad hachera misapeches," and the Medrash says misapeches she mishapchen. Pamim anoshim, pamim noshim, pamim ruchos, pamim alochim. So the Gemara here is darshaning that this pasuk is not referring to malachim moron, but rather to shadim, and these are called kruvim in this pasuk. And mishapchim lekama givunim. So they're different colors. And mashed mishapek lekama givunim, different colors, different hues. Af haman mishapek lekama ta'amim, different tastes. I'm just curious what the English translation of gvanim, I translated as hues. He says. He says gvanim means forms. I'm not sure how he knows that the translation is forms, but he points out something interesting, that if you take the statement of Rabbi Avo, he says that it means shade zeh. And when you get to the Ika Diamri, it says, second, shade mamish. So he offers another girsa in the name of some of the Rishonim that take the word mamish and put it back to Rabbi Avo. And Rabbi Avo says shade zeh mamish. Vayomer Moshe b'seis Hashem lechem ba'erev basar lechem. In the evening, they had the meat coming down from heaven. V'lechem b'boker lisba, and the lechem came in the morning. Tana, we learned in the Brisa, Mishmeder of Yeshua ben Korcha, Basa Sheshalu Shaloka Hogen. They were very satiated, they have enough food, and yet they're asking for meat. That was an inappropriate request. And not only that, they had plenty of cattle. They could have slaughtered the cattle and eaten meat, and yet they were coming demanding meat. So that's called Shaloka Hogen. That's not appropriate. Therefore, Nita Lev Shaloka Hogen. How is the meat Shaloka Hogen? So Rashi explains that the meat would fall evening time, and there wasn't enough time to prepare it for supper. And in contrast, on the top of Ayin Hayim and Beis, Lechem Shesholuka Hogen, they didn't have lechem, and it's very critical for a person to have lechem. That's a staple of life, right? It's a staff of life. Is Nita Lev Kahogen. It was given in the morning, and that means they had plenty of time to slice it or toast it or whatever they wanted to do, prepare it for the Suda. It was in the morning.